What's up? How you doing? Here we are. Beautiful day today. Mild out. Nice breeze. This day gives you a feeling of well-being inside. Have my Starbucks coffee here, iced. And 24 hours later, still has no effect on the Hulk. No effect. You can't choke this guy out. He's got one of those necks that you can hang him on a rope and it won't make any difference. Muscles, too much. So, and this guy, you know, it looks like Aquaman. Aquaman doesn't have a chance against the Incredible Hulk. Plus, different company. One time I worked at a place where the boss would send the uniform out to get dry cleaned every week. So you had like 3 or 4 shirts, a couple of pants or whatever, and they'd send them out to a dry cleaning company. But I didn't like the dry cleaning chemicals. And so I would take the stuff home and wash it, but some of the stains, you know, they wouldn't come out 100%. So I discovered if you took this product or anything like it, Joe's all-purpose hand cleaner, right, contains cleaning agents in it. And what I would do, I would take this and I would put it on each, if there were stains or something, grease stains or any kind of other stains, blood. I'd put that on there and I'd let it sit overnight. And then the next day, definitely mama's boy. You hear that? The mama's boy. The next day I would put it in the wash with some Tide in hot water, and every stain would come out. So not only does this clean your hands if they're greased up from like a valve job, but they also clean your clothing. Now, as long as the stain is not years old, like, you know, you didn't find a shirt that was stained back in the 70s, this won't do anything at that point. But if it's relatively new and you put this stuff on, it'll take it out. And I will tell you that very pleasant fragrance. Kind of smells like when they clean your car at the car wash and the guys go in there with the spray and they get everything. It has that kind of smell. Or when you're a kid and you have a cough and the doctor prescribes some prescription medicine for you and it tastes really good. I remember when I was a kid, you had a sore throat or something, they prescribed this really nice tasting penicillin liquid. It was pink and it had a really nice flavor. Now, if they can remove the penicillin and sell that as a beverage, every kid would drink that. It was so good. And I remember if you had a cough, they had this purple grape flavored beverage, cough syrup, and it was so good. You couldn't wait to get sick. It was so good. So anyway, I recommend, well, this, you know, this is waterless hand cleaner. So you put it on and then you take like a nice cloth and remove this thing from your skin and it'll take everything out with it. Now I clean these out and the rust went into the grooves of my hand and they're almost out. Now there's a few spots, but most of it, 99% of it is out, 99.2% is out. And I tried this with the rust. It did not work with rust. Matter of fact, I tried a bunch of things for the rust. None of them worked. So I had to wash my hands many times with Ivory soap. Ivory seems to be a good soap. I didn't realize that. When I was younger, my parents would always buy Ivory. And I thought it was an anemic soap for cleaning. But it's actually a very good soap for cleaning. And that convinced me back in 1983. There was a friend of my father's, he was a welder, and one day I went to visit him and his hands looked like he spray painted them black. And so we went out into the back there and there was not a hose but pipe that comes out of the house, and he turned it on. He had a fresh bar of ivory, and I said to myself, that's not going to work. You need something like this. I was going to tell him, very inexperienced. I was going to tell him, you don't know that. So anyway, he takes out the bar of ivory and he lathers up, and I've never seen anybody wash hands as good as him. Matter of fact, I based my hand washing technique on him from all those years ago. Still remember that like it happened yesterday. So he lathered up, the lather became dark black, then he rinsed, and his hands looked very clean. Then he did it a second time, and he did the exact same thing. Nice rubbing them in like he was doing surgery or something. Did that for about a couple of minutes, then rinsed them off, and his hands were shiny, brand new hands. And from that day to now, I based my hand washing technique on his. I was very impressed, and because of that, he changed my mind on ivory. You know, prior to that, I thought ivory was not that great of a cleaning soap, and then I saw him do that, and I said, no, whatever's in ivory, that 99.44, whatever that stuff is, that stuff really works. So yeah, I'm a big supporter of ivory soap. And that guy's still alive. He's still around right now. He's in his 90s. But last I heard, which was about 10 days ago, he was still around. Speaking of that, I want to say George Foreman. I'm saddened by George Foreman dying. Big fan of George Foreman. I followed him throughout his career, including the comeback. The comeback I followed like a hawk. I was so happy when he won the championship back, what was it, 95? He won that? Or 94, 95? He was a 46-year-old man, he won that. I was very happy. I remember jumping up and down. But I used to have this dream. George Foreman was kind of like my security guard, my savior. So in the dream, I'm running away, somebody's chasing me, they're trying to get at me, right? I'm turning around, they're catching up. And then there's this old abandoned building, and it looks boarded up. You know, there's plywood, and everything's boarded up. It's made out of brick, but all the openings have plywood. And the front has these old wooden heavy-duty doors, and they're chained. And as I'm running away from this person, and they're catching up to me, George Foreman opens up the doors and pulls me in, and I turn around and the person behind me is like 10 feet away, and George Foreman pulls me in, and then the dream ends. But I've had that dream where he saves me, and I was a big fan of George Foreman's. I remember one time I was in my room. I used to get Ring magazine all the time, KO and all that, but Ring magazine, and I kept thinking about, you know, what happened to George Foreman? He retired young. What happened to him? So I was reading the magazine, and on the last page in the back there was a little article about the comeback of George Foreman. And I remember I was sitting on my bed reading it, and I was so happy that George Foreman was making a comeback. Very strong guy, strong punch. That's the thing, you know, if you're a boxer or whatever and you have a power punch, you can beat anybody. All it takes is one good shot, and you know, that's it. Even if you have minimal skill. So I was always a fan of George Foreman. Great personality, great person. I never bought the grill, but I always enjoyed listening to him, and he's a decent man. You know, you hear him talking and you connect with him. Married 5 times, right? But he finally found the right person, because he was married to the same person for 40 years at the end. Yeah, 5 times, named his sons George. But he didn't call him that, right? He had a nickname for each one of them. So I will miss George Foreman. One of my favorite heavyweight fighters, heavyweight boxers of all time. I enjoyed it when he was on Sanford and Son. He had an episode years ago where he was, I don't know what he was doing, a commercial or some kind of show, and he was like playing George Foreman, but he was doing like he was acting or something, and Fred Sanford was constantly interfering as if he was the director. So Foreman was on that. I remember watching that as a kid, George Foreman. And I'll tell you this right now, I know Muhammad Ali did beat George Foreman, but if you notice, he never gave him a rematch. Because that rope-a-dope nonsense that he did, and it is nonsense. You allow somebody to beat you up until they get tired, and then you win by exhausting them after they've beaten the crap out of you. That's not a good strategy. No, I don't think so. You know, you pay the price for that later on in life. So anyway, he allowed, because everybody knew that George Foreman, his stamina was awful. After round 7, you know, Foreman was not, he was not that good. He would get exhausted, and he was unable to perform after 7, 8 rounds. And so Ali took him past that, and then was able to knock him out. I think it was the 11th round. I may be wrong on that. Don't quote me. Oh, you can quote me if I'm wrong, but just understand that I'm thinking it was the 11th, but it might have been after. It might have been the 13th. I think it was the 11th. I gotta check that out. And anyway, obviously Ali had a better strategy for the short term, but Foreman was a much more powerful fighter. You see how he demolished Frazier both times with that famous "down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier," and then Ken Norton, where Ali had a very hard time with Ken Norton. Foreman had a very easy time with Ken Norton. Not even close. Now, as long as Foreman didn't spend all his energy and get exhausted by round 7, he was going to win. But if he did that, for him to win, he had to get you out early. You know, 3rd, 4th, 5th round, around there. That's when he was the most dangerous. If you took him beyond that, he was done. And he had that whole episode where he was dehydrated, he was hallucinating in the ring. He thought he had an encounter with Jesus. Jesus told him, you know, go open up a ministry, preach. Apparently that's where Jesus comes to you in those situations, in the ring, while they're counting you out. So anyway, he ended up retiring, spent the next 10 years as a minister, helped the youth of his area. They're very decent man, very decent man. And he had a very different style of fight. He did a lot of that peekaboo stuff, but he did that, you know, he fought like this, and he did this a lot for defense. But there was a vicious fight. Stewart, I forget who he fought. I think it was Stewart. He fought this guy who really hurt him. I mean, Foreman's head looked like a basketball. It was like swollen. And his wife, watching that, probably said, you know what? That's going to cause permanent damage. That was a vicious fight. I'm surprised he didn't die from that. That was a brutal beating. If you go and watch that fight and go towards the end of it, you won't believe how badly beaten Foreman looks. Horrible. I mean, I'm happy nothing happened to him after that, but it was one of those fights that you saw that could have turned ugly. The end of it could have been George Foreman dying on that one. So, but when I saw him fight Jerry Cooney, remember Jerry Cooney there? The accuracy of those punches that knocked out Cooney, those were incredible. At one point, Foreman looked like he was walking away or something, and then nailed him again. And then he went down like a tree. Cooney. Jerry Cooney. I remember Jerry Cooney when he fought Larry Holmes. That was a overly hyped fight. They really pushed that one. They used race on that. They used, you name it. It's a little bit disgusting when they do that, you know. It's like man against man. That's enough. You don't have to add the, you know, white and black stuff. Why do you have to make it like that? I do not like that stuff. You know, it really, you know, and especially these years. And okay, that was those years, but still, you know, even then, I felt we were beyond that. But Larry Holmes did win. I'm a big fan of Larry Holmes. Jerry Cooney, great fighter too. You know, Jerry Cooney had a great left. But Larry Holmes was better. Larry Holmes was better, had an awesome jab. Larry Holmes was known for his jab. Larry Holmes and George Foreman never fought, although at the time of the second comeback, there was talk. There was talk that they would fight, but it never happened. I think, I don't know, see, that's a tough fight, you know, because Larry Holmes was a great technician. You know, I remember watching fights in the old days, and Larry Holmes was behind, and then he would work his way back. You know, very technical fighter. And that jab was awesome. I mean, you see the jab, it's like a bee sting. Boom, boom, you know, jackhammer. But one good shot from Foreman, you never know. One good shot could have knocked him out. I mean, Mike Tyson was able to do that to Larry Holmes. Yeah. Yeah, everybody thought Larry Holmes would go in there and be able to fight Mike Tyson and you know, keep him off of him by jabbing. Couldn't keep him off of him. Mike Tyson was just way too much. And it wasn't that Larry Holmes was 38. 38 is not that old, you know, it really isn't. It was different style of fighting where, you know, in the past, Holmes would fight people where he could jab and keep them at bay. But Tyson was a swarmer, and it's tough to keep a swarmer off of you. It's like Marciano was the same way. So once they come close and they start throwing those punches one after the other, it overwhelms you, and a few of them caught Larry. And he always says that maybe he could have done something differently, but his hand got caught. You know, you'll watch the fight, he goes to hit Tyson, and the ring rope, you know, catches hair on Larry Holmes, and he can't, and then Tyson hits him again, and down goes Holmes. But Holmes was a great champion. Like, you're talking here, what it was, 20 title defenses, somewhere around there, and he had the title for about 7 years. Then Spinks comes along and wins the first fight. That was a legitimate win. I don't care what Larry Holmes said after that about Marciano not being able to carry his jockstrap. He could have if he wanted to, but the fact is that second fight that he fought Spinks, Larry Holmes killed him, demolished him, and they still gave the decision to Spinks. That was robbery. You know, Larry Holmes really won that fight. I watched that, and you know, that's nonsense. They didn't like what he said, and that was payback. You know, but there's no reason why the second fight went to Spinks. You know, Spinks was a good fighter. He did win the first fight, but not the second fight. So I will miss Big George Foreman. We'll miss him. He's, you know, very few fighters end up doing that, what he did. Win the championship, a couple of title defenses, you lose it to Ali, and then you don't get another shot. They should have had that in the contract. I never understood why in the old days they didn't have an automatic rematch in the contract. You know, they should have said, I'll fight you, and you should have said, okay, I'm the champion. If I lose, there's an automatic rematch. But Ali never gave him the rematch, because Ali knew that the next time around, Foreman would not fall for the rope-a-dope, and Ali would have lost the second fight. Ali, great fighter, very fast, but didn't have the power that Foreman had, or Ernie Shavers, Tyson, Marciano. Didn't have that kind of power, but very fast fighter. And that fight he had with Sonny Liston, that punch, they call it the Phantom Punch, that actually made contact. They have now high-definition versions of that fight where you could watch it in slow motion, and clearly he hits him in the right spot, and Liston goes down. That was not a setup. That was not a fake fight thing where he pretended to be down. He actually got hit. And I remember the commentary back then. They actually established a panel. It had Dempsey on it, and Marciano was there, and a couple other people, and they were talking about that, and they were like, nah, there was no punch there. That was Liston going down. You know, that was like a fixed fight. It was not fixed, and he didn't go down for no reason. He got hit hard. Watch the remastered version of that, and watch it in slow motion, and you'll see that there is a solid but fast punch. where it shakes his head. It's like a, and then he goes down. Those kind of punches are the worst. They knock you out, you don't even know what happened. You're like, what am I doing on the floor? I was up there, a second ago fighting, and now all of a sudden I'm on the ground here. Yeah, in boxing, when you get hit, you don't remember getting knocked out. You just realize that, I'm on the floor. And it's almost like somebody took the video and cut one piece in the other and then spliced it together. So you remember being up fighting, and the next thing you know, you get hit. You don't even remember that, but the next thing you know, you're on the ground looking up, and the referee's at number 6. You're trying to get up. So, anyway, that is it for now. Ciao.